It is December 26th, 2024. And for all of you that celebrated yesterday, I hope that you had a very Merry Christmas. I know we are right in the midst of holiday season, so plenty of you are still celebrating, still spending time with family, or you're getting ready to celebrate here in the next couple of weeks. So I wanted to take a minute to make a video on the latest coming out of Gaza, on the latest reports that are getting overlooked by everything else that the media is focusing on and that social media is focusing on today. And I also wanted to talk about the ongoing attempt we're seeing from the Biden administration to cover up these reports, to act as if everything is fine in Gaza. There's no famine, there's no genocide. Don't worry about it. That is the message that they are sending. So we are going to be getting into all of the latest here in today's video. As it was reported on Thursday that 5 Palestinian journalists were killed in an Israeli airstrike on their vehicle in central Gaza. The men who worked for Al Quds Today were in a broadcast van clearly marked as press. As Al Jazeera reported, the vehicle was parked in front of a hospital where one of the journalists had been waiting for his wife while she was in labor to give birth to their first child. And in a statement, Israel doubled down on its decision to kill these journalists, insisting that they were actually members of the group Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and even going as far as to claim that it tried to reduce harm to civilians with this strike that was on a car marked as press in front of a hospital. And I swear, literally only Israel would at this point, I mean, we're 14 and a half months into this genocidal bombardment and blockade that Israel has carried out of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. At this point, Israel has dropped the equivalent of multiple nuclear bombs with all of the bombs that they have dropped on this small piece of land, making it the world's largest concentration camp. And yet they're sitting here and claiming that they took steps to reduce civilian harm. Where? Seriously, where in the Gaza Strip has that actually been the case? And this is your reminder that Israel has targeted journalists at an unprecedented rate in the Gaza Strip, killing an estimated more than 140 journalists while injuring and arresting dozens more just in the last year. All of those protections that are supposed to apply to journalists under that international rules-based order that the US claims to love so much are completely non-existent when it comes to the Gaza Strip and Israel's treatment of the journalists there. Israel has made it very clear that they do not want anything documented from on the ground. They do not want their war crimes to be broadcast to the world. And they have also made it clear that they also don't care about the civilians in Gaza. And I thought it was interesting. You've got the New York Times with this recent report stating that the IDF actually changed its own policies in the aftermath of the October 7th attacks last year. And in this new policy that they rolled out, it allowed them to kill up to 20 civilians in any given attack, in which they were able to claim that there was a suspected militant in the vicinity. The report said the change in rules meant that, for example, the military could target rank and file militants as they were at home, surrounded by relatives and neighbors, instead of only one when they were outside alone. Now, while I appreciate the fact that you have the New York Times bringing up the conversation about the rampant killing of civilians in Gaza by Israel, and also noting that you have Israel in this position where it is intentionally killing civilians, I feel like this has already been known, right? We don't have to just look at a quote unquote change in policy that is happening among the IDF. This is something that has been reported over and over again. When we talk about these kill zones that the IDF sets up, where it decides that any area of the Gaza Strip at any time is now a kill zone. And it doesn't matter who walks into that zone. If it's a child, if it's any kind of civilian, they are allowed to target them and to kill them. We've seen reports on the fact that every time Israel launches an airstrike, they know exactly how many people stand to be killed from it. And they are continuing on with that strike over and over again. I mean, you don't have Israel bombing hospitals and refugee camps claiming that it is doing anything to reduce the harm to civilians. And the results of Israel's complete destruction of Gaza's infrastructure, the results of their rampant attacks and their forcing Palestinians to be displaced over and over again from one refugee camp to the next. Oh, well, now we're seeing the results of that in real time, as 3 babies froze to death in Gaza in just 24 hours because they were in tents and their families had no way of keeping them warm. And hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are facing the exact same conditions. And those babies are a reminder that while you have tens of thousands of Palestinians that are recorded in the official death toll, right? They're counted every time Israel carries out a bombing and their bodies can be confirmed as dead. Well, you also have arguably hundreds of thousands more of dead Palestinians who are dying as a result of what they call indirect deaths, right? They're being starved to death. They're dying because they were sick and they didn't have access to any kind of medical care. And this is all intentional, right? This is an intentional part of the genocide, of the ethnic cleansing that Israel is carrying out, targeting the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. And it's no secret that the US is enabling this genocide, right? They're sending the weapons, they're providing political and public cover for Israel every way that they can. But every time there is a new report out about the lengths that the Biden administration is going to provide cover for Israel, it still comes as, I don't even want to say a surprise at this point, right? I should not be surprised. Every time I see it, I go, yep, okay, that sounds about right, right? But it still is shocking in the sense that the US government has absolutely no shame whatsoever. I mean, just look at this latest example where you had the US funded Famine Early Warning System Network, which was forced to withdraw its report this week after it issued a warning of imminent famine in northern Gaza. It noted that under Israel's blockade, between 2 and 15 people are expected to begin dying of starvation and related ailments in the region per day, beginning as early as next month. And I just want to take a moment to say that every single member of the Biden administration who participated in this backlash should be ashamed of themselves. That includes USAID, which called for a retraction, and also US Ambassador to Israel Jacob Lew, who referred to this report as inaccurate and irresponsible. And I truly do not understand how these people can live with themselves. I mean, Israeli officials told the world that they were going to make the Gaza Strip hell on earth, right? They told everyone exactly what they were going to do. And yet here you have the Biden administration dancing around, providing cover, and acting as if the public is just going to forget, and yes, many people have forgotten, the fact that you had Secretary of State Antony Blinken literally issuing a letter to Israel back in October telling them that they had 1 month to allow more humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip and that this was something that they really needed to focus on. Now, it came as no surprise when Israel didn't listen, and really even less of a surprise when the Biden administration did absolutely nothing in response, right? There were no kind of consequences for Israel's crimes. But I think it's important to remember, for those who do remember, that this letter was sent on October 15th, just a couple of weeks before a very important presidential election that the Biden administration was trying to win. And then after the election was over, what did they do? Oh, they just stopped caring, right? Suddenly, the issue of getting humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip did not matter anymore. The Biden administration showed its true genocide supporting colors. And I do not care how many statements we get from them claiming that we are so close to a ceasefire deal, right? They are working tirelessly. They're sending Blinken over to the Middle East for yet another trip. When it comes right down to it, I still expect that any deal won't happen until Trump gets into office. And it will, of course, have a handful of caveats that still allow Israel to do whatever it wants. And speaking of Israel getting to do whatever it wants, I mean, I guess that there is a ceasefire deal in Lebanon currently between Israel and Hezbollah. I mean, I know that Israel claimed in that deal that they were still allowed to carry out defensive strikes. So every time that they bomb Lebanon, now they get to claim that it is defensive action. But even with that being the case, my question is, why is Israel continuing its destruction of homes and buildings in southern Lebanon and continuing to encroach on Lebanese territory to the point where the United Nations peacekeeping force in Lebanon is raising the alarm about it? I mean, Israel's crimes have gotten so bad that even Pope Francis took time out of his Christmas address to the Catholic cardinals last weekend to reference Israeli airstrikes that killed at least 25 Palestinians on Friday, saying, quote, "Yesterday children were bombed. This is cruelty. This is not war." And he's 100% correct there. I mean, this is not war. You do not have Palestinians in a position where they are anywhere able to fight back against Israel. And no, I don't consider any sort of rocket attacks launched by Hamas or any other Palestinian militant group as fighting back against Israel. You're not fighting back when you have around 1 million Palestinian children who are being targeted in this way, right? You have the New York Times laying it out, being like, yeah, Israel is intentionally killing civilians. You have report after report before that noting that Israel is intentionally killing Palestinians. And then you have the Biden administration working overtime to try to cover it up, insisting that's not famine, right? Don't worry about the fact that Israel has launched an entire siege on northern Gaza, that their goal is to cut off hundreds of thousands of Palestinians to try to starve out as many as they can so that they can gain further access to that land. And yes, I do think it's entirely possible that Trump comes in on January 20th and that there's some kind of quote unquote deal that is made, right? Some sort of ceasefire, some sort of Israel claiming. Now, it could be the exact opposite of that. I mean, Trump could come into office and Israel could use Trump and his cabinet and everyone else to try to make it seem as though they have the freedom to go forward and to bomb the Gaza Strip even more than they're already doing, which I don't even know what that would look like at this point. But I do think that there is a real possibility that you get Trump in office. He wants to get some sort of deal done, right? He wants to make it look like he's brought some sort of quote unquote peace to the region, but none of it takes away from what Israel is doing right now. The crimes that they are carrying out, the fact that they are using the fact that so much of the West is distracted with the holidays that we have going on here at home, or maybe we're looking to Syria or to other parts of the world or other places where there is a lot of news, right? There are legitimate stories to be talking about. But that's also why today I wanted to take a moment to just talk about the Palestinians, just talk about what they are going through. Because even if there is a ceasefire agreement tomorrow, right? Even if the bombs stop falling, that does not change the fact that Israel and the US and its other allies, that they have made the Gaza Strip completely unlivable, that their goal is to drive the Palestinian people off of their land. And their goal is then to take over that land themselves, to do whatever they want with it and to make sure that it is no longer part of Palestine, just as they have done with the rest of the territory in the region, just as they are doing with now parts of Syria, where you see these plans for greater Israel coming to fruition right before our eyes. And so much of the region doesn't care, right? So much of the world does not care because they don't feel like it affects them. They look at the Palestinian people and they say, well, why should I go above and beyond for them, right? Why should I care about what they are going through? Why should I make Israel an enemy on my end if they are then going to come after me? And yet we continue to watch the Palestinian people suffer in this just horrific way, whether it's famine, whether it's being targeted by the bombs that are still falling, whether it's their babies freezing to death. And it's a reminder that if we care about humanity or morals or any kind of international rules-based order, which I know that the US does not at the end of the day, it's just something that they love to throw out there. But if they actually cared about that, they would not be supporting crimes like this. They would not be supporting death and destruction like this, knowing that they are complicit in a genocide. And there's so many different avenues in which you have the US establishment working to silence voices that are speaking out about the Palestinians, right? You've seen it in the incoming Trump administration, their vows about how they're going to target any college students that protest. They're going to label them as quote unquote pro-Hamas when they are speaking up for the Palestinian people. You see it in the fact that we're looking at an incoming TikTok ban here in the US, because that is the app where so many people have taken to speak out for the Palestinians, to speak out against Israel. And because the US government cannot control it, so they are doing everything in their power. Literally, they don't care about free speech. They don't care about any of the rights that we are supposed to have as Americans when it comes down to anything that may hurt their foreign policy ambitions. And as we continue on with this holiday season, right, with all of the distractions that are all around, it's so important to keep an eye on, to be aware of, and to not look away from the crimes that Israel is committing and that the US is supporting right before our very eyes. And that's something everyone should be talking about. If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanction. You can also catch Sanction over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. As always, thank you all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.